Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder-director of the Freedom Library, Howard Blitz.
Good evening. Welcome to the Freedom Library's 19th Annual Education Forum. In its mission to help individuals understand the meaning of individual liberty, the Freedom Library promotes events such as this one, in addition to its scholarship classes on the U.S. Constitution and economics. The Freedom Library's next event will be held December 4th at Post Auditorium, featuring an evening with Mr. Madison, where the audience will be enlightened and entertained by former President James Madison as he reflects on the writing of the United States Constitution. Tonight, though, the Freedom Library is extremely proud to present three well-spoken individuals: Andre Cherney, Jacob Hornberger, and Dinesh D'Souza, who will articulate their respective liberal, libertarian, and conservative positions on the proper role of government for America's future. The Freedom Library thanks all of the sponsors listed in your program, as tonight's activity would not even be possible without them. Thank you all very, very much for your support. The Freedom Library wishes to also thank all of the crew and volunteers from Gila Ridge High School and Arizona Western College for their help. And Arizona Western College for the use of their props in making this such an effective event, as well as the individuals and businesses who donated to tonight's opportunity draw prizes. Thanks also goes out to the members of the Freedom Library Board of Directors for all of their guidance and support. Of course, many thanks to all of you, the audience, for attending tonight's event. Your support is very much recognized and very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Yeah, give yourself a thank you. At the conclusion of tonight's debate, you will have an opportunity to visit with our special guest and have your book signed, as well as have an opportunity to make book purchases. Also, don't forget to stop by the opportunity draw table to see if you won a prize tonight. Now, please welcome Mr. David Reek, General Manager of KAWC NPR Radio, who will introduce our very special guest and explain and moderate tonight's debate format. David?
Good evening. Very excited to be here this evening. As a public radio station, of course, we are very interested in public discourse and focusing attention on matters that are important to our community. First of all, I'd like to introduce founder and president of a prominent idea journal. His name is Andre Cherney. He's a best-selling author and advisor to Presidents Clinton and Obama, a nationally recognized economic policy expert and business consultant to some of America's top companies. Andre Cherney has been a leader on the issues confronting America in the 21st century. Cherney is currently the CEO of Aspiration Partners, a new investment community that is dedicated to democratizing the financial world by bringing elite investments to everyday investors in a way that marries profit with philanthropic purpose. Cherney is also the co-founder and president of Democracy, a public policy journal and think tank that seeks to spur new ideas on the major issues facing America and the world. Democracy's ideas have made their way into the national political debate and into legislation in Congress and in states across America. Working in the Clinton White House, Cherney was the youngest White House speechwriter in American history. He served as a senior advisor to Vice President Al Gore and was the lead negotiator and chief drafter of the 2000 Democratic Party platform. Helped develop the winning message for John Kerry in the 2004 Democratic primaries as special advisor on policy, and served as a part-time advisor to Barack Obama's presidential campaign and co-author of his campaign policy book, Change We Can Believe In. Cherney has served as a senior fellow at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government and at the Center for American Progress. He has written frequently on global economic policy, politics, and history, for newspapers such as the New York Times, Washington Post, and Los Angeles Times. He has appeared as a commentator on television news programs, including ABC's Good Morning America, CBS's The Early Show, and The O'Reilly Factor. In 2008, he authored the best-selling book, The Candy Bombers, the untold story of the Berlin airlift and America's finest hour, which describes the intersection between the end of World War II and the 1948 presidential election, the beginning of the Cold War, and the Berlin airlift. Charity's first book, written in 2001, The Next Deal, The Future of Public Life in the Information Age, examines how government, business, and community life will change to meet the challenges of the 21st century new economy. As a former Assistant Arizona Attorney General, Attorney prosecuted complex financial fraud and corporate crime with a 100% conviction record. As the chair of the Arizona Democratic Party from 2011 to 12, he worked to offer Big Tent Main Street leadership that offered a thoughtful alternative to anti-immigrant and anti-investment sentiment. Chair lives in Phoenix with his wife, son, and daughter. He served 8 years as an officer in the United States Navy Reserve. He graduated with honors from the Harvard College and from the University of California, Berkeley Law School. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Andrew Cherney. Jacob Hornberger is founder and president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, a libertarian educational foundation located in Fairfax, Virginia. He was born and raised on a farm in the Rio Grande near Laredo, Texas. Mr. Hornberger received his BA in economics from Virginia Military Institute, and following in the footsteps of his father, Jacob became a trial attorney in Laredo after receiving his law degree from the University of Texas. Mr. Hornberger handled both criminal and civil cases, but ended up specializing only in civil litigation. He has also been an adjunct professor at the University of Dallas, where he taught law and economics. In 1987, after practicing law for 12 years, Mr. Hornberger became director of programs at the Foundation for Economic Education in Irvington, New York, an organization founded by Mr. Leonard Reed to inspire, educate, and connect future leaders with the economic, ethical, and legal principles of a free society. 2 years later, Jacob Hornberger founded the Future of Freedom Foundation with the aim of establishing an educational foundation that would advance an uncompromising case for libertarianism in the context of both foreign and domestic policy. The mission of the Future of Freedom Foundation is to advance freedom by providing an uncompromising moral, ethical, and economic case for individual liberty, free markets, private property, and limited government. Under Mr. Hornberger's direction, the Future of Freedom Foundation communicates its message of individual freedom and limited government to the public by means of its monthly publication, Future of Freedom, its daily email publication, FFF Daily, and by op-ed pieces published in more than 800 newspapers in the United States and Latin America. In addition, the Foundation hosts a weekly internet program called The Libertarian Angle and co-sponsors a monthly Economic Liberty lecture series with the George Mason University Economic Society, a student-run group interested in libertarian and free market economics. FFF hosts and maintains web audio and video archives, holds face-to-face meetings, sponsors lectures and radio appearances, and publishes books. Jacob has co-edited several books that are composed of essays by different authors, including The Tyranny of Gun Control, The Failure of America's Foreign Wars, Liberty, Security, and the War on Terrorism, The Case for Free Trade and Open Immigration, and is the author of Economic Liberty and the Constitution, which was written in 2009. He has also advanced freedom and free markets on talk radio stations all across the country, as well as on Fox News' Neil Cavuto and Greta Van Susteren shows, and has appeared as a regular commentator on Judge Andrew Napolitano's show, Freedom Watch. Not being a stranger to humor, having been here on many occasions dating back to 2002, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Jacob Hornberger. Our final guest tonight is Dinesh D'Souza, and we have a special introduction for him.
We're living in the American era, but this moment of American triumph is very fragile.
Of course we can say thievery was a critical element to the expansion of the American empire and the establishment of the American way of life. Of course.
The settlers came in, killed out, exterminated the native population. That's one of the two original sins of society.
Another being slavery?
The other is slavery.
The idea of racial reparations is a good one. I think it's one about justice.
Why do you want to blow up Mount Rushmore? You're quoted saying it's like having Hitler looking over you.
It's a symbol of oppression. It's a symbol of genocide for our people.
And there's a reason why most of the world regards the United States as a predatory colonial power.
The war with Germany has ended. The forces of freedom have triumphed.
When you hear the name America, what are some words that come to your mind?
European expansion, conquest, colonization, genocide.
The private capital, unless it's constrained in some fashion, is extremely destructive.
And more destructive than even centralized federal power?
In a country like ours, it's much more destructive.
This argument at the core is a moral indictment of America and of the free market system. Reagan had called the Soviet Union, you remember, an evil empire, and the Soviet Union is dissolved. So who's the new evil empire?
Well, you're sitting in it.
How badly we need right now a Washington, a Lincoln, a Reagan, but we don't have them, but we do have us.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome. A couple of quick logistical announcements. Of course, if you could turn off your cell phones or whatever devices so we don't get any interruptions, that way we'd appreciate it. Also, if you need to use the restroom, there are restrooms in the back of the auditorium by the green exit signs or out in the lobby that you came in through. So if you need to do that, please do it quietly. Basically, our format, we're going to have each of the gentlemen give us an opening statement here in just a few minutes. And then the Freedom Library has come up with a series of important topics that we're going to have our speakers discuss in a series of questions and answers. We'll go through that, and then there'll be some closing remarks at the end. So it should be a very full evening, and we're expecting it to go very quickly, but it should be very informative. We're going to go in reverse order with the opening statements, and so Dinesh D'Souza will go first.
Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here and particularly excited to be back in Yuma. I was here about a dozen years ago, and this is my second visit. It's not my second visit to Arizona. In fact, I was introduced to Arizona in 1978 when at the age of 17 I came to America as a Rotary Youth Exchange student. I lived in Little Patagonia, south of Tucson, and I went to public school, the 12th grade. I mention this because in the course of my year, I stayed with 4 host families, and at various times they would say to me, Dinesh, you got to see the sights of Arizona. You got to go to the Grand Canyon, you got to go see the dam, you got to see this, you got to see that. And I said to them, look, I actually don't need to see any sights, because to me, the most impressive sights of America are right in front of me. They're the smoothness of the roads. They're the 25 varieties of cheese in the local store. They're actually it's the abundance of life available to the ordinary guy. What I mean by this is that the rich guy is going to live well anywhere in the world. A country is judged not by the kind of living it offers to the affluent, but the kind of possibility it offers to the common man. And it struck me as kind of amazing that in America, the ordinary fellow, and I'm talking even about the guy who isn't all that smart and isn't particularly hardworking, nevertheless lives in a nice house, has 2 cars, and essentially is able to be the architect of his own or her own destiny. So this is the American formula, the American recipe. And the founders realized that when they created this recipe, it was something new in the world. I call this the spirit of 1776. It's the spirit of entrepreneurship. It's the spirit of self-discipline. It's the spirit of being in the driver's seat of your own life. That's why immigrants come to America. They're attracted not just by economic opportunity, but by the chance to author your own destiny. That's the meaning of America. And the conservative in America is the person who conserves that. Conserves what? Conserves the spirit of 1776. So you have a kind of paradox or irony, which is that conservatism in America means conserving the spirit of the American Revolution. We're conserving a revolutionary tradition, one might say. And this revolutionary tradition has built America. It continues to build America today. But what's different today is that there is a rival spirit in America that is undermining the spirit of 1776. And now, let's examine for a moment how that can be. If you look at the principles of 1776, the principles of the founding, it was based upon a linking of three types of freedom. Economic freedom, political freedom, and you may say civic freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. And for the founders, these three freedoms were interlocked and inseparable. But what's happened since the founding is that you've seen a kind of progressive attack on the spirit of 1776. Sometimes we can loosely call it the spirit of 1968. The attack on economic freedom actually began in the 1930s. And it began against the backdrop of the Great Depression. But the very concept of the progressive is the idea that somehow the American founding was sort of defective. The founders maybe were hypocrites. They said all men are created equal. They couldn't have believed it because they clearly allowed slavery. So the progressive narrative is essentially a narrative of a defective founding culminating in progress. So the basic idea is that Washington, Lincoln, and Hamilton kind of messed it up. But then along came people like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama who are finally getting it right. They're basically improving on the defective work of the founding generation. Now, to anyone coming to America from the outside, you can see this for the complete idiocy that it is. First of all, there is no significant reform in America that is not a return to the founding. So for example, when Martin Luther King said he was submitting a promissory note, you might ask, who gave it to you? Did the Southern segregationists write a note? No. He was appealing to the Declaration of Independence. And therefore, although progressives write long books about how Thomas Jefferson was really a racist and a hypocrite, the fact of the matter is the civil rights movement would not have been possible were it not for a charter written by this Virginia planter. He wrote the promissory note that Martin Luther King demanded to be cashed. So that the civil rights movement, far from being a break with the founding, was nothing more than a realization of the founding principle. So you may say, well, why did the founders realize it themselves? Why did they have to wait for Martin Luther King to do it? Here we have to recognize the central principle, not just of American politics, but of all of life. I'm going to call it the principle of the lesser evil. The principle of the lesser evil means that in the real world, unlike the philosophy or the legal seminar, you are often not choosing between the good guy and the bad guy, between the good choice and the bad choice. You're often choosing between the bad guy, and the really bad guy. World War II, we ally with the bad guy, Stalin, because another bad guy, Hitler, poses a greater threat at the time. The American founders were simply not in any practical position to abolish slavery. The idea that they could have done this is simply nonsensical. Slavery was legal in all 13 states that gathered together in Philadelphia. If the founders had decided to have a union without slavery, it's quite possible that no state would have joined that union, certainly no southern state. And then America would have been many countries, and slavery might well have lasted longer. So there's nothing hypocritical about doing what the founders did, which is establishing a union on anti-slavery principles while allowing slavery temporarily to continue. I say this because the civil rights movement has essentially created a sort of prejudice against the American founding and in favor of the 60s. The 60s actually was not fundamentally about civil rights at all. The progressive movement's main thrust is an attack on free enterprise, an attack on capitalism, an attack essentially on wealth creation. If you look at a guy like Obama, the key thing about Obama to understand is that fundamentally he's a guy who's got a lot of different ideas about how to distribute a pie, but no idea whatsoever about how you make a pie. And absolutely no clue about how you make a pie grow. So, what does Obamaism or progressivism today even mean? The abundance of America was created by capitalism and wealth creation. Capitalism and wealth creation are now the hope of the world. If you go to countries as far away as Thailand and Singapore and China and India and Brazil, hundreds of millions of people are lifting themselves up out of poverty, not because of IMF loans, not because of all the progressive nonsense of handing out grants left and right, not even because of all the good work done by Bill Gates and the charitable organizations. It is technological capitalism itself, the American recipe, that is today more popular.
Excuse me, your time has expired. That's what the red light is.
Where's the red light?
It's right in the middle there.
That's okay. One sentence to close up?
Sure.
It's a supreme irony that this American idea, so popular today around the world, is being undermined by progressive government right here at home. Thank you.
KAWC is our timer, and he has the little spot back there. So you guys can go along with that. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
It's great to be back here in Yuma, Arizona, and it's especially a big honor to be here participating in any program that's put on by the Freedom Library. It's a tremendous honor. And I can't imagine any more important question to be discussed and debated in this entire country than the one we're debating today. What is the role of government in a free society for the future direction of this country? As you now know, I'm a libertarian. All that simply means is that I believe in individual liberty, free markets, and limited government. That's compared to my liberal and conservative opponents here who believe in socialism, interventionism, and imperialism. What is socialism? Well, at a minimum, it includes any government program that takes money from this group of people and gives it to this group of people. That includes Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, foreign subsidies, corporate bailouts, foreign aid to dictators, and every single program that takes money from people and gives it to other people. It is this way of life that is bringing this country down. This is the road to bankruptcy. We've seen it with Greece. We've seen it with out-of-control spending. We've seen it with out-of-control debt. We see that debt ceiling being raised time after time again. And we look the other way. We act like nothing's going to happen. This is the road to disaster. This is the road that liberals and conservatives have carried our country. All under the aura of mandatory charity. That's what all this is about, mandatory charity. They want to force people to be good and caring. We libertarians don't believe in forced charity. We believe that charity comes from the voluntary, willing heart of the individual. We don't force people to go to church. Why should we force people to give money to other people? When you're standing in a grocery store line, the cashier says, "You want to donate $1 to such and such a cause?" You have a choice there. Liberals and conservatives want to deprive you of that choice. They want to force you to do the right thing. We want to separate charity and the state. Interventionism? It's just government programs that punish people for engaging in choices that the government doesn't approve of. Peaceful choices. Drug war is a good example of that. A program that both liberals and conservatives have waged for decades. It is a destructive program. It is an immoral program. It has brought nothing but ruination of lives, destruction, bribery, corruption, drug gangs, drug lords. You can't even go into Mexico anymore because of the dangers of going over there because of the drug war. 60,000 dead people in Mexico alone. And for what? You're sending people up to the penitentiary for 50, 60 years. You got cops stealing money from high people on the highways to fund their operations. And for what? It's accomplished nothing. Nothing positive. And they want to continue waging it for another 50 years. Immigration controls. Anybody that's been born here in Yuma has been raised under a constant crisis environment. Oh, the illegal aliens are coming to get us. They're invading America. They're taking jobs away every day. And I know this because I grew up on the border. I grew up on a farm. We hired illegal aliens. I saw the Border Patrol coming into our farm without a warrant, busting workers. It was our farm. It was our money. We struck the deal with these guys that were really happy working for us. But this is what interventionism does. It creates constant chaos, constant crises. And it's going to last forever. They'll tell you that they'll come up with reform plans and ideas and fixes. It's the same thing. I've heard it for 60 years. Crisis, crisis, crisis. Libertarians, we believe in freedom and free markets. We would legalize all drugs, heroin, cocaine, marijuana. Ditch this whole prohibition system and restore some harmony, free markets to this area. Treat drug addiction privately through therapy and rehabilitation. Not through criminal justice. Open the borders to the free movements of people. That's the heritage of this country. Open borders. Where you got a free flow of people, where people are not dying in the desert anymore, dying in the back of 18-wheelers or in trucks of cars. People keep their own citizenship. There's 1 million Americans living in Mexico. Why should they be forced to become Mexican citizens? Who cares? A free flow of people where people keep their own citizenship. And all of a sudden, now you're talking about humanity and morality and treating your neighbor as you treat yourself. Imperialism, something else that liberals and conservatives stand for. They've developed this huge military complex, something that our founding fathers stood in opposition to. Military bases in 1,000 countries, serving as the world's policemen, bombing countries, invading countries, waging wars of aggression against countries. And for what? For constant crises. ISIS, Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, Ho Chi Minh, Saddam Hussein, on and on and on. Every one of them, every one of you has lived under a constant climate of crisis, fear, every single day. That somebody's going to come and get us. That's what empires do. That's exactly what the Roman Empire did. It's what the British Empire did. It's what the U.S. Empire has done. Libertarians, we say dismantle the empire. Restore a constitutional republic to our land. That's our heritage. Our heritage is not big military establishments. That's not what the founding fathers stood for. They stood for a constitutional republic. In debating this question, you've got to ask yourself a very fundamental question. What are your goals in life for a society? What are your goals for yourself, for your family, for your children, for your grandchildren? And it seems to me that all of us would agree that our goal is a free, prosperous, and peaceful and harmonious society. What more could you ask for? And that's not what we live under. We live under a government that is constant crisis-ridden, chaos-ridden, and that is sending us into bankruptcy, and in the process making us less safe. These checkpoints that you have here on these highways, they're right out of the Soviet Union. I've been to Cuba. I can tell you they have these checkpoints in Cuba. You got the NSA spying on people, monitoring your emails and watching recording your telephone calls, watching your websites that you're visiting. You call this a free society? This is what liberals and conservatives have brought to our country. If you want a prosperous, free, dynamic, harmonious society, there's one key, and that's libertarianism. And that's why 30 years ago, when I got into this thing, we were a small movement. We were marginalized. Not anymore. Now libertarianism is on the table. It is a force to be reckoned with, and these liberals and conservatives know it. And that's because people are figuring things out, especially young people, who are increasingly self-identifying as libertarians. Not because it's cool, but because they're studying, they're going online, they're reading what we're doing, they're going to programs like the Freedom Library, they're learning the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and they're realizing that there's one way out of this status for us, out of the chaos and crises and loss of freedom and loss of monetary stability. That key is libertarianism. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here tonight. Thank you to Howard and the Freedom Library for putting this great conversation together. Spent a lot of time in Yuma over the years, and I'm especially glad to be here on a cold day, relatively. And glad to be your speaker on your far right. If there's any other Democrats out there in the audience, the rest of you don't have to worry, it's not contagious. It'll all be fine. We want to recognize especially one person who I believe is here tonight, and that's a candidate for office here, Charlene Fernandez, a friend of mine for many years. Is she here? She is stand up. There she is in the back. It takes a lot of courage to run for political office, and whether you're Democrat, Republican, libertarian, vegetarian, hope you'll look her over. She is the kind of person who's been involved in the community, serious-minded person that I think you'd enjoy conversing with, and hope you'll consider voting for her in November. As I said, I appreciate having you here today.